Hello and welcome to Pitboards and Podiums with me, Maya Westwick. In today's episode, we are going to be doing the track guide ahead of the 2024 Monaco Grand Prix. So buckle up and let's talk F1. Alright guys, so it is race week in Monaco this week. Very exciting. I'm going to give you all the information that you need to know about the circuit, about the timings, and a bit of context from last year as well. I am very excited for this weekend because I love the Monaco Grand Prix. I know a lot of people think that it's a bit boring because there's not that much opportunity for overtaking, but I adore the Monaco Grand Prix. I always have and I always will. And it is such a historic race. It is such a historic circuit. It takes so much skill from the drivers, so much precision, and I just love it. The timings for this weekend, first of all. On Friday, we've got FP1 at 1:30pm local time, 12:30 in the UK. FP2 is at 5pm local time, 4pm UK time. On Saturday, we've got FP3 at 12:30pm local, 11:30am UK. Qualifying at 4pm local time, 3pm UK. And then on Sunday, lights out for the race will be at 3pm local time or 2pm in the UK. This did change recently. Historically, Monaco was a 4-day event, so FP1 and FP2 would take place on the Thursday because there wouldn't be any running on the Friday because it's a public holiday in Monaco, and then like media day would be on the Wednesday instead of on the Thursday. But Formula 1 changed that so that all of the race weekends were the same, so that all of them went Friday to Sunday, and then they introduced Las Vegas, which goes Thursday to Saturday. So that one made sense. But that is how it is now. It is standardised to pretty much the rest of the calendar. And some stats now for you. It is a 78-lap race around a 3.337 kilometre or 2.074 mile circuit. There are 19 turns, 7 to the left and 12 to the right, and they are all named, as with many, many historic circuits that have been in Formula 1 for years and years and years. They are, instead of it just being turn 1, turn 2, they have names, and I'm going to tell you what those names are. So, turn 1 is Saint-Devote, that is named after the church, the Saint-Devote church that is on that corner. Then turn 2 is Beau Rivage, which means beautiful shoreline, and you're literally driving up and you can just see the sea and it's gorgeous, that's why. Then you've got turn 3, Massenet. Turn 4 is Casino Square, and that is directly outside of the main casino in Monaco. Then you've got turn 5, which is Mirabeau Haute, which is High Mirabeau. You then go into the Fairmont hairpin, which is one of the most famous turns in Formula 1. It's definitely the most famous hairpin in Formula 1. Absolutely iconic, and that is always named after the name of the hotel that is situated on that hairpin, which is the Fairmont, so it's the Fairmont hairpin, but historically it was the station hairpin. And then you go down into turn 7, which is Mirabeau Basse, Lower Mirabeau, because from turn 5 to turn 7, from Mirabeau Haute to Mirabeau Basse through the hairpin, there is quite a substantial decrease in elevation. You then go through turn 8, which is Portier, into the tunnel. And Monaco is the only track on the Formula 1 calendar that has a tunnel as part of the actual race track. For a while it was the only tunnel at all, but now with the addition of the Saudi Arabian Jeddah Corniche circuit, their pit exit is through a tunnel. But the tunnel in Monaco is famous. It is also notoriously difficult for the drivers because obviously it's quite a lot darker in there than the rest of the track, so they're going from extreme light to dark to then straight back out into the light again, into quite a tricky braking zone for the Nouvelle Chicane, which I'm going to tell you about in a moment. Also, if it's raining in Monaco, if it's a wet race, the tunnel's going to be dry because the tunnel's practically inside, so it presents challenges for the drivers in the cars. So then turns 10 and 11 are the Nouvelle Chicane as you come out of the tunnel. Then turn 12 is Tabac, which is named that because there used to be a tobacco shop on the corner. And then turns 13 and 14 are the Louis Chiron Chicane. 15 and 16 are the swimming pool chicane, or piscine if you say it in French because it's Monaco, and that is because they built a swimming pool there, which changed the layout of the track a little bit. Then you've got 17, which is La Rascasse, and then 18 and 19. The last two corners of the circuit, as you go back onto the main straight, are Virage Anthony Nogues. I'm going to have said that wrong, I'm so sorry. He's basically the man that's responsible for there being a Grand Prix in Monaco, and Louis Chiron, who I mentioned earlier, was a Monegasque driver, and he is one of the few people from Monaco to have won a race in Monaco. So there is one DRS zone that is on the main straight, and the detection point for that is at Raskas at turn 17. The race distance is 260.286 kilometres or 161.734 miles. So you'll notice there, if you have watched my other track guides where I've spoken about the rulings on how long a race has to be and why it's that many laps and all that sort of thing, you'll notice that the Grand Prix is actually shorter than the standardised ruling on how long a Grand Prix has to be. Even with them doing 78 laps, obviously the circuit is very, very short. If it was a track that wasn't so historic in Formula 1, if it didn't have such a history of literally being in Formula 1 since Formula 1 started, it wouldn't be approved in this day and age to be a Formula 1 circuit. You couldn't put it onto the calendar now if it wasn't already on the calendar, because it is not it's not FIA Grade 1 approved, which you have to be a Formula 1 circuit. It is not long enough to have a race distance of 305 kilometres. There's quite a few things that it doesn't have that technically by today's rulings it has to, but because it is so historic, it is literally part of the Triple Crown of motorsports. It's like the jewel in the crown. It's Monaco, so we allow it because it's Monaco. The first Formula 1 race was in 1950, the first year of the Formula 1 Championship. The first motor race in Monaco was in 1929, and that is, as I've said, because of Anthony Nogues. Again, I've said that wrong, I'm so sorry. I don't speak French yet, but I will change that. He was the president of the Monaco Automobile Club and decided to hold a race, because what do rich men do with their money when they like cars? They close public roads and race on them. That was sarcasm. Also true though. So it was part of the first ever calendar of Formula 1, and there's an incredibly rich history of motorsports in Monaco, probably because of it being such a affluent principality, obviously, especially historically, now just as much, but historically, motorsports have always been a rich man's game, which for Monaco, kind of, you can see where that's come from. It is an incredibly tight street circuit, which, as I said earlier, makes it immensely challenging for the drivers. They have to have a lot of precision, a lot of skill, and it really, really relies on driver skill rather than the power of the car, because Monaco is not somewhere that you can just go for a kilometre in a straight line and floor it and have a really powerful car and overtake people. There are not any long straights in Monaco. It is incredibly tight and windy because it is literally around the streets of the principality, so you have to have incredible skill. You have to focus more on your speed through corners and maintaining control of the car through corners and finding the limit and not pushing that limit too far, but pushing it enough to have more of an edge than everyone else. And I just love it. I do really love it. It is, of course, very difficult to overtake because of how narrow it is, but when you do get overtakes, they tend to be stunning. We've seen overtakes in recent years at the hairpin, which have been gorgeous, especially because modern day Formula 1 cars, you should not go too wide into the hairpin. I mean, Lance Stroll couldn't go one wide into the hairpin last year. Also, the chicanes tend to be quite interesting areas for overtakes, but of course, because you're so on the limit, it's also very easy for drivers to not make the corner of the chicane and have to cut it, and then they have to get the position back because obviously you can't leave the track and gain an advantage. So that can be areas where penalties are received for track limits and for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. And winning the Monaco Grand Prix, as I said, is part of the victories that count towards the Triple Crown of motorsports, along with winning the Indy 500 and the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Graham Hill is the only winner of the Triple Crown in history. He's the only driver to have achieved the Triple Crown of motorsports. But out of drivers who are still active at the moment, both Juan Pablo Montoya and Fernando Alonso have 2 of the 3. So Juan Pablo Montoya won the Indy 500 and Monaco, but he's not won the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And then Fernando Alonso has won the 24 Hours of Le Mans multiple times, I believe. And he's also won the Monaco Grand Prix. For our current drivers, Monaco is Charles Leclerc's home race. Obviously, the majority of the Formula 1 grid, I genuinely think it's about half of them at this point, live in Monaco. So it's a home race to all of them, but Charles Leclerc is a native Monegasque. and only 3 Monegasques has ever won around the circuit in its entire history. So Louis Chiron, as I mentioned earlier, he won the 1931 non-championship Grand Prix, because of course the championship didn't start until 1950. Stefano Coletti won the 2013 GP2 sprint race, and Stefan Richelme won the 2014 GP2 sprint race. But other than that, no native has ever won the race. And Charles Leclerc does have a history of having a bit of a curse at Monaco, which I think he has lifted. I don't think the curse is there anymore. This could come back to bite me. He could have an awful race weekend. But I think he's going to win this year. I think we're going to see a gorgeous race, gorgeous qualifying from him, and it's going to be incredible. That's what I think. But I could be very wrong. Who knows? The record for the most poles is held by Ayrton Senna. He got 5 poles in Monaco, and the most wins is also held by Senna as well, with 6 wins. The race lap record is 1 minute 12.909 seconds. That was set by Sir Lewis Hamilton in 2021, and the qualifying record is also held by Sir Lewis Hamilton. That is 1 minute 10.166 seconds, and that was set by him in Q3 in 2019. The pole position is situated on the right hand side of the track, which is the inside down to turn 1, down to Saint-Devote. The start line to turn 1 is 114 metres. 59% of the lap is spent on full throttle with a maximum speed of 290 kilometres an hour. But it is also home of the slowest corner in Formula 1, which is the Fairmont hairpin, which they literally take at about 30 miles an hour. There are around 47 gear changes per lap, and the expected pit stop loss is about 16.4 seconds going into the pit lane. Of course, however long their pit stop takes is added onto that. The tyre compounds that are available to the teams are the C3, 4 and 5, and that is because Monaco, as I've said, does not have a big long section of track that you can go really fast on and achieve loads of downforce on. It is a track where the drivers and the teams need to bring an incredibly high downforce setup. It's like the maximum level of downforce that they need to bring in Formula 1. So most teams run special circuit-specific high downforce configurations on their cars. They bring Monaco-specific wings, other aero elements, anything that they can use to increase the amount of downforce on their car, they bring for Monaco to maximise their grip levels, because generally they are going to be driving at lower speeds than in other circuits on the calendar, and these softer tyres from Pirelli, the 3 softer tyres in the Pirelli range, means that they're going to have a higher level of mechanical grip as well. So they're really maximising the downforce and the grip that they can, because otherwise they're going to be going straight into walls, because there's not even runoff areas for them, it's just straight into concrete walls. One of the most notable Formula 1 crashes historically at Monaco is Alberto Ascari crashing his Lancia into the Monaco harbour in 1955. So theoretically that can't happen anymore. Theoretically the barriers in place will stop that from happening. But in 1955, Alberto Ascari, who is a Formula 1 world champion, literally ended up in the actual harbour. He ended up in the Mediterranean Sea during the race. So you've really got to be very precise with where you put your car, because otherwise it could have disastrous consequences. There's also some other kind of controversial moments at Monaco. There was, I can't remember what year it was, but there was a year that they'd put a diamond, I believe it was, or an emerald, I think it was a diamond, into the nose of a car. That car crashed. The diamond has never been seen again. Things like that. In more recent years, there was a moment in 2022 where during qualifying, Perez crashed at the entrance to the tunnel, so crashed at Portier, and that meant that that was the end of qualifying. There's been quite a few moments at Monaco of once a driver has set their pole time and set the fastest lap of Q3, they've then crashed or parked their car to mean that nobody else can set a time. Michael Schumacher's done that quite controversially. And it was believed by Verstappen and his side of the garage and his family that Perez had done that, and then that caused a little bit of beef within the Red Bull dynamic for a little while. But I think that's all sorted now. Who knows? It wasn't for a while. So it's just one of those things that a crash in Monaco is very high stakes. So qualifying in Monaco is extremely high stakes anyway, because it's so difficult to overtake. So you really want to do well on the day. You want to have a good grip position and you want to maintain that position. I mean, It's one of the easiest circuits if you're leading the race. It's one of the easiest circuits to maintain the lead of the race. Daniel Ricciardo managed to do it with a broken car. He managed to still win the Monaco Grand Prix in, 2019, I believe, 2018, because nobody could physically get past him. So it's one of those races where if you're able to defend and you're able to stay ahead, good for you, because it's really difficult to overtake, but you need to have that track position to be able to have a chance to do that. So Monaco is so important to get it right in qualifying. In the 2023 race, we had a little bit of chaos because it started dry and then it started to rain, of course, which caused quite a bit of chaos with pits and people grazing the wall, hitting the wall, just, the track's a bit slippery, they've got even less grip, they're going into walls. It's just one of those things. The finishing order of the race was Verstappen in P1 with a race time of 1 hour, 48 minutes and 51.98 seconds. Alonso was in P2, 27 seconds behind, and then Ocon completed the podium in P3, 36 seconds behind. Then we had Sir Lewis Hamilton P4, who also set the fastest lap of the race on lap 33 with a time of 1 minute 15.65 seconds. George Russell was P5. He had a 5-second penalty for an unsafe rejoin, but he didn't lose or gain anything from that. He was still 5 seconds ahead of Leclerc with his penalty, and he was about 16 or so seconds behind Hamilton with his penalty. Leclerc was P6, Gasly P7, Sainz P8, and then everybody else from there was lapped. So we had Lando Norris P9, Piastri P10, Bottas P11, De Vries P12, Zhou P13, Albon P14, Tsunoda 2 laps down P15, Perez P16, Hülkenberg P17. He got a 10-second penalty post-race for failing to correctly serve the 5-second penalty that he got during the race, during his pit stop, which he got for hitting Logan Sargent on lap 1, and then Sargent was P18, 2 laps down, and he had a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane, and then Magnussen and Stroll both did not finish the race. The qualifying order for last year was Verstappen on pole with a time of 1 minute 11.365 seconds, Fernando Alonso P2, who was denied pole by less than a tenth of a second, and that would have been his first pole since 2012, so that was very good from him, but so close yet so far. Leclerc qualified P3, but he had a 3-place grid penalty for impeding Norris during qualifying, which meant that he started the race from P6, which bumped Esteban Ocon up to P3 because he qualified in P4, which is where he, of course, finished the race. So that shows you again how important qualifying is. If you manage to qualify out of position in Monaco, that can be incredible for you, or in the case of drivers who would expect to be doing better, like Perez, who crashed during Q1 and started the race P20, that can be disastrous for you. So then Sainz qualified P5, Hamilton qualified P6, so then Ocon, Sainz and Hamilton all bumped up 1 place, then Charles Leclerc slotted in. Then we had Gasly P7, Russell P8, Tsunoda P9, Norris P10, despite brushing the barriers in Q2 after running wide at to back, he did make it through to Q3 just. Then in P11 we had Piastri, P12 De Vries, P13 Albon, P14 Stroll, P15 Bottas, P16 Sargent, P17 Magnussen, P18 Hülkenberg, P19 Zhou, and then P20, as I said, Perez, because he crashed in Q1 on his exit through Saint-Devote, which brought out the red flag very, very early on. So that is all the context I was going to give you ahead of the Monaco Grand Prix. I'm very excited for this weekend and I hope you are too. And I am going to do a TikTok on the Pitboards and Podiums TikTok about the history of the Monaco Grand Prix, because it is such a historic event and I want to just talk about some controversial moments through the years and how it's developed since 1950 when the first Formula 1 race was and all of that sort of thing. So if I get a chance before the race, I'm gonna do that over on the TikTok and I'm very excited for it. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do let me know. Like, rate, comment, subscribe, share the podcast. I would really, really appreciate it. And I will see you in just a few days with the Monaco recap. So yeah, have a gorgeous weekend. And thank you very much for listening/watching. Bye.